Thanks for joining us, Chelsea. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Hi, Keelan. I'm so happy to be here. And so is Theo. I'm hanging out with Theo in his kennel because it was really loud at my desk. And, I figured we're talking about animals. I might as well come hang out with one of the animals that I had to work to market. So if you see Theo's tail, he's just hanging out.
I love his face. I love everything about him.
He's so cute.
So for anybody who doesn't know you, can you just introduce yourself? And I'm most interested in how you got started in this wild world of animal welfare.
Yeah. So, yes, my name's Chelsea Jones. I am the senior communication specialist here at the Animal Welfare League of Arlington. Which, to be honest, I don't manage anyone. It's just that I've been here long enough that they wanted to give me a new title. So I don't manage anybody. There's not a junior. It's just me. But yeah, so I've been in animal welfare now for 10, 11 years. Pretty much started kind of right after college. I do have a BA in communications, but no clue what I wanted to do with it, So I was working in retail. I saw this job posting for an adoptions counselor at a different shelter, and I was like, that sounds like fun. And I think it was 2 weeks in, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. So it was pretty, I fell in love with the work pretty quickly. But that was doing straight front desk and adoptions for 4 or 5 years. They then started kind of letting me do a little bit of social with them. And so I started getting to actually use my degree, which was great. And then I applied for the communication specialist here, got the job. And I've been here for 6 years now at the Animal Welfare League of Arlington. So I love it. It's super fun. And I love that I actually get to use my degree for something. It's great. Not everybody does.
Amazing when that happens, right? Especially, I think you and I are we're in a similar, the similar class of animal welfare. I always think of it as high school. We came in around the same time. I think
early.
Yeah. For me, it was 2008, 2009. It was the same thing. Totally kind of fell into it, and then was like, oh, this works. This is what I would love to do.
This is fun. I like this. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I ever since I was younger, I had told my parents, I don't really want to have a desk job. I want to do something where I'm working with people and I'm hopefully making a difference to someone. And then that turned into this. And it's actually funny. Yesterday I had posted some photos on our work Slack about my dad, because it's funny that I sort of fell into this. My dad was actually in the 90s when I was very little. He volunteered at a marine mammal rescue. So it's sort of I'm why were any of you surprised that I now do animal welfare stuff? My dad did it as well. So
yeah,
it runs in the family, I guess. Yes. I don't get to work with seals, which would be pretty cool, but one day, you never know.
Once in a while, there's little pit bulls that are just like baby seals. So
true.
Right?
Very true.
So can you tell us a little bit about the Animal Welfare League of Arlington, and just what services you offer to the community?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the Animal Welfare League of Arlington, we are contracted by the county, Arlington County, to run the shelter on their behalf. So I'm not a government employee. They, trust us to do the work. We provide sort of what the county sees as basic animal sheltering services. So, adoption, spay neuter, all those kind of things. But then on top of that, because we have such a supportive and generous community, we're able to also provide a lot of community support services. We just recently joined HOS as well, which was exciting, but we offer low-cost spay neuter for the public, low-cost vaccinations for the public. We have a safekeeping program, which is called our HELP program, which is where if a member of the public is suddenly hospitalized or loses their housing in an emergency situation, their pet can come stay with us for a short period of time. So many things. We offer private and group classes of dog training to the public. We have a training helpline. We really, especially in the last couple of years, have really ramped up our focus on keeping pets with their families whenever possible. And we still have a very robust adoption and transfer program. But we're trying to keep on that train of hey, if we can help, if we can get your dog to stay with you instead of coming here, like that's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk to you. That's a lot of things to be marketing.
So I was like, wait, is there anything else?
For today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your adoption marketing, which I think is relevant to this moment in time, because I think a lot of shelters are experiencing either a higher population earlier in the year than is typical for them. I'm getting a lot of questions about long stay pets, and just generally, I think the last 2 years are catching up with all of us, community members included, in terms of us all being a little bit worn out, a little bit exhausted. And I think that impacts the way that the way that we're able to kind of explore some of the creativity that maybe feels lost to us. And so it felt like a good time to kind of return to the basics of adoption bios and adoption photos and things like that. And so the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about was, I think that you have a cell phone photography program that was inspired by Dallas's photography program. And I wanted
shamelessly stealing it from them.
That's what it's all about, right? Is begging, borrowing, stealing. Can you share about how that program is structured, and how your team is empowering volunteers to really take control of some of the photography for adoptable pets?
Yeah, so it is a very baby brand new program. So we're still kind of learning as we go, but it was born out of a need for just more people to be able to create content for us. We've had a very well sort of staffed professional photography volunteer team for a long time. I currently have 3 people, but sometimes I'll have 5, it kind of fluctuates, but I have a good solid kind of base. And they are wonderful. They donate their time as professional photographers. They take some amazing photographs, but because that's their job, I don't want to be emailing them constantly like, oh, we have this event or this animal needs a picture. It's too much. I try not to take advantage of their generosity, because I realize that that's money that they could be earning doing the exact same thing. So yeah, I saw the post from the Dallas shelter, and I thought that's a really good idea. And the honest truth is that nowadays, most of us have a phone in our pocket that can take fantastic photographs with, some talent. You have to have some ability to kind of know what a good photo is, but not I have to spend the money on a DSLR. I have to know how to use it. Part of that also is an effort on our part to start being more inclusive and with our volunteers in how they can participate, because the professional volunteer program requires them to have expensive cameras, be able to donate their time when they could be making money. And not everybody can do that, but there's some very talented artists that have a phone or have a different camera that would love to donate their time. So it's, kind of was hitting a lot of different purposes. But yeah, we've just started it very recently. The goal with it is to have another group of people that can come in a little bit shorter time frames typically. So more, not last minute, but hey, we have an event going on this Saturday, and it's Wednesday. Would you be able to pop by and get some photos? Or, we have all these cats, and the volunteer professional can't come in, could someone come help me get some cat photos? And just really branch out that group of volunteers, so that we're getting all these different views. And that's a big part of it too, is that when I'm the only one, aside from the professional photographers, when I'm the only one taking the videos and the photos, you're getting one perspective of our animals, right? And I know it's visual, we're not even talking about words yet, but visual is also the way that one person interprets something visually is very different than mine. So in an effort to also diversify the way we're presenting our animals, that is part of it too, is getting different people in to express themselves. And so we don't have the only requirement I did with having volunteers apply, I did ask them to submit some photos. Just, I want to make sure that they have some natural ability to take a good photo. But other than that, there was really no qualifications. They have to have some basic animal handling training so that they can take animals out by themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like a desire to help. And I've told all of them, like, I want you to express your like art and your photos. Like, you don't have to make them look the way I make mine look. So yeah, they're all really excited. We've just started, but they're loving it so far. So it's a fun thing to have.
That's awesome. So do your volunteers also help with bio writing? Do you have a program that kind of helps create content on the written side of things as well?
Yes. So that's another little baby program that we just started. So basically we took the we took the professional photographers, and we've expanded that out into a marketing team, a volunteer marketing team, which will include the professionals, the phone photographers, the bio writers. I also have a young lady that helps me with TikTok, so she's in that group. Yeah, so anyone that's sort of helping me with my job, basically, like, they're on the volunteer marketing team. So yeah, right around the same time that we realized we needed more photographers, I also was like, we need people to help us with bios, because they're not getting written for different reasons, which I'm sure everyone understands. They're not getting done, and they're sometimes, when your staff have written their 3,000th dog bio, like, they're just done and they can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
And they get a little stale. So yeah, so that's again a program where we went ahead and reached out to our current volunteer base. The only two requirements were, again, that they have basic animal handling skills, because part of this role is that we don't want them to just look in Pet Point and take that data and write something about it. I was like, I want you to go and hang out with that dog, or like spend some time with this cat and really get to know them. That's how you write a good bio, is you actually know the pet you're writing about.
Yeah.
So they have to have some basic animal handling training, or they will get it from us. And then we did give them like a sample to write. So like I gave them a photo of one of our dogs, and I was like, here's bullet points of like what we know about this dog. Show me what you got. I didn't give them like a ton of guidelines beyond that, because I just sort of wanted to see naturally what people would come up with. And yeah, I think so far we've got three people on that, which is actually, for us, from nothing, is great. 3 people is really good. We're a small shelter. And they're just getting started as well. But it's a fun role, because what it entails is, each week, most of them are coming in 1 day a week. They'll get a list from me of, like, I keep it small, like 3 to 5 animals, depending on who they're trained to. Some of them only do cats, that kind of thing. Yeah. They get a list, and I say, spend time with them. I show them where to get the information that they need in Pet Point. And then they write it up, they send it to me, I make any edits, and then I put it in. And that is a big part of it, is that I feel like, at least in the beginning, I need to have eyes on them just while we're kind of learning, right, to make sure that things are what we're looking for. And we did, for the phone photographers, not so much, but for the bio writers, we did do a training with them to talk about some of the stuff that you guys talk about, how to write a good bio. So we did that with them in the beginning as well.
That's awesome. And how ultimately what's your philosophy around bio writing that you're sharing with them? I know you're using some Heartseek stuff, which is cool.
Oh yeah.
But whether it's staff or volunteers, how do you kind of ensure that as you're going, it's not just like they're writing a bio and then you're going like, we would love for you to change it here. Yes. Like, what kind of foundation are you giving them?
Yeah, so they do get a packet. They get one of your packets at the beginning. We're big fans over here. So they do get a Heartseek packet about bio writing, and we give I have the photography book that the photographers get to look at as well. Yeah. Shameless plug. No.
I was gonna say, I didn't even pay you to say that.
You did, I promise. But we give them the packet, and that's kind of like a good basics. And then we build off of that packet, because we do have just our own, our organization's voice and kind of things that we do. So they start with the packet, we go over that. We don't have a ton of rules for it, but they are given our branding guideline, which if anyone out there is interested in seeing, I'm more than happy to share it with you. And that has a couple of paragraphs about our voice. So our voice is generally it's casual, it's fun. We try to make everyone feel like they're kind of part of the family. And so we want that to be in our bios as well. We don't want them to be like super serious or sound kind of like judgy, anything like that. So that's the first step. We go over stop sign language. So like I kind of refer to it as like red light and green light is how I've been describing it to them. Our bios are exclusively green light language only, 100%. We were doing that pre-COVID, and over COVID, like some of the red light language just kind of started sneaking back in. Just because I'm not the only one that writes them, but so it happened. I think people were just feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, and they were just like, I just want to make sure people know. And I had to sort of have
virtual adoptions, right? Like sometimes when things were more virtual, it felt like you needed to do a little bit more.
Let me get it all out there. So about 6 months ago, actually, we had a meeting about it. We had a department meeting, and I told them, I said, this is how we're going to do this. I'm going to stick to this very forcefully. And we're going to see how it goes. And it's been going great. People are always worried about, but are people going to be upset if like I don't tell them up front that like Theo is diabetic? That's why I'm in here with him. He's one of our hard to market cats. And then they come in and they're going to find out that he's diabetic. I'm like, no, because if we do this the right way, they're not going to be upset, right? So we're not hiding information. It's that we are presenting our animals with their best foot forward. I like to talk to the team about it, and lots of people have used this analogy, but it's like a dating profile. When I did online dating, met my husband online dating, you're not gonna put out there that like, oh, I clipped my toenails in the car. You're gonna like whatever weird thing. We all have weird things, right?
Yeah,
you're not
everybody's
gonna put that. Yeah, exactly. That's not going to be front and center of your profile, right? You are probably not going to find that out for a long time. You're going to put all the great things about you. You're trying to draw people in, and that's exactly what a bio should be. So we actually have started referring to it as their dating profile instead, because I think that helps keep it in the staff and volunteers' mind of like what it is that I am writing. So we don't talk about medical stuff almost ever. The only situations where we have done that is with FELV cats, just because even coming to visit them, we kind of have to be very upfront about it. But we have templated language that I wrote about how to write that. So there are some things that hypothetically could be red light language, but we have already written out the description of it in a way, Theo says, yes, you did, in a way that we hope is inviting and not scary. Like that's the biggest part of it. So, we don't talk about if they're not good with dogs, doesn't go in there. If they're good with dogs, it does. But all that stuff that is potentially going to put someone off, even if they're not in that situation. So, I absolutely could have adopted a dog that isn't great with other dogs, but would I have come in and met a dog that said like, not good with other? Probably not. Whereas if I come in and met them and they're like, just so you're aware, this dog has reactivity, and they were able to explain it in the real life situation for that dog, much more likely to adopt. So
and
that's
especially because
that's
so nuanced, don't you think? Like when we've shortened it to like not good with other dogs, but that's a sliding scale that for some dogs really means like for some dogs it means like when I'm on a walk I'm going to bark at other dogs, but I actually could live with other dogs. For other dogs it means I don't want to live with other dogs, but when I'm out on the walk I'm going to be really polite and ignore other dogs. So like it's such a sliding scale that we've tried to condense.
And that's the danger, I think, of when you're using templates that are more like a checkbox. Like I've seen it before, really cute kennel cards that say like good with other dogs, like check, or good with kids, whatever. I get the appeal because for the adopter, it's answering some questions very upfront, but for dogs that maybe are not so good that you can just check a box, you're missing out on a great opportunity to explain they're nuanced, like what exactly is going on with this dog or this cat. So we don't have any like restrictions in the bios. And actually we have a shelter policy that the only people that can put a restriction, so like no kids, no dogs, something like that, on a dog or a cat is our behavior team. They're the only ones that can do it. And they are only allowed to do it in cases where the safety of another dog or a child may be, like, we know it's not going to be good. Like there is documented evidence that they cannot live with another animal because, and this is something we talk about a lot, is that the other part is that when the animals are in the shelter, it's not a real representation of what their behavior outside of the shelter is going to be like. We've had so many animals get adopted, and we get a letter a month later that says, well, you guys said this about this animal, but they're great and they're doing fine. And we're like, okay, you know?
Yeah, fair enough, right?
So we don't kind of use black and white language like that when it comes to sort of the red light, the negative, quote unquote. I prefer to say challenges or personality quirks. None of us are perfect, okay?
No, far from
it. We don't put any of that stuff in there. On the opposite hand, we do try to make our bios, our dating profiles, like as factual as we can, which is hard when you have an animal that like just got there or no one's really spent a lot of time with them. But you know, are they house trained? Or have they lived with other pets successfully before? What cues do they know? And those are the basics. But even stuff like we have a dog right now, Rexter, whose favorite thing to do in the yard is pick up the biggest stick, he can find, and like whip it around all over the place. So that is the focus of his bio, is like we've talked about that he's a fencing master, and that, you know, so is that like a useful skill for him? No, but does it tell the adopter a really fun fact about him that kind of hooks them in? Absolutely. So some of the factual stuff is just fun. But we try to avoid, you know, like Rexter is a sweet and snuggly couch potato. It just doesn't mean a whole lot. If that is 100% accurate about them, great. But expand on that. Like, go into it a little bit more. Like, is he a leaner? You know, Rexter has a super cute habit of like leaning on you and staring at you longingly. So like we write about that, you know? So it's taking some of these more basic sentences that a lot of us use in our bios, and we just try to push them a little bit further with actual, like, I have seen him do this cute thing. To make them a little bit more of an individual. It's not necessarily to make them stand out, because we want all of our animals to stand out, right? But it's to help the adopter see the individual animal instead of just like, oh, he's snuggly, but like most dogs are. You know? So that's
and it starts to lose its meaning a little bit, for sure.
And that's what I'm getting at, I guess, is we try to avoid the standard phrases that have lost their meaning, that really don't tell you anything about the animal. And it's a hard balance. And like you said, that's why we're having volunteers help us, because after you've done this a long time, you're just like, I don't know. And we're a small shelter, you know, so we don't have hundreds of these to write. We only usually have like maybe 20 at a time.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I think I want to put in that caveat for anyone who is from a very large shelter where you have, you know, intake in the hundreds by the week. I think that there are ways that you can still take this advice and this model and kind of have it suit your needs. And those are the cases where like not letting perfect be the enemy of good is going to be the name of the game. So like if you have to say sweet and snuggly a few times, so be it.
But we were talking about I think Theo and Creamsicle are going home, just so you guys know. I think they're getting adopted right now, so please excuse us while we're talking. Yay! How exciting. You're fine, sorry about that.
That's okay.
You guys are getting to see a great moment. Our diabetic cat and 10-year-old diabetic cat and his bonded brother are getting adopted. That's a big deal here.
That is a big deal.
Yes. So that was something we were talking about before we started recording, but was that while we can strive to have these like really nice, like factual, fun-filled bios, on the other hand, I don't think you need to like kill yourself trying to make everyone like amazing. Because we all know a lot of what gets people to come and look at an animal is their photo, not necessarily their bio. So something we did in an effort to help our fosters, because we did start requiring, I don't want to like that word, but like it's expected of them that they write a bio for their foster pet.
Right.
But it's difficult to tell a foster who's never done this before, like, oh, go write a dating profile. So I wrote a template that is great for the staff who maybe don't have as much time, or the fosters who are just getting started, to at least get some nice info in there. So it's really simple. It's just, X's favorite things are what, but they're not so into what. And that there's a caveat in there that's supposed to be funny. It's not really for like serious stuff. So, like I have one dog right now that in there it says like, not a fan of like mornings after it snows. Like that's cute, I'm like, yes, I sympathize. Me too, Sydney. Right. And then it says, for flavor, what would I be? And we ask them to say it, but then explain why. And you get some really cute answers in there.
Yeah.
And then it says like, what would my perfect day look like? And then what are some other fun facts about me? So just anything that doesn't fit into that category.
Yeah.
And that I feel like makes it a little bit easier when you've got hundreds of animals. You can just be like, here's the template, fill this out, and then you can just quickly check it over and throw it up there.
Yeah.
So there's no problem with having a template.
And we have an almost identical template to what you're describing. I think it says, if I were a dessert, what would I be?
I think I might have stole that from you.
Please. Steal is the name of this game. But I think for anybody that's looking for those kind of tools, like I totally agree. Like I think there is a time and a place to implement the fastest way to get the best information out there. And you can still abide by that core philosophy of really trying not to put up restrictions, but really trying to engage people, get them talking, so that even if that animal is not going to be the one that they go home with, that they've now opened up to all the other options in front of them at the shelter. I wanted to go back to, you mentioned voice, and I think something that we were talking about before we started recording that I think is really valuable is how individualized the voice of an organization is to that organization, and how I want you to talk a little bit about, seeing and being inspired by other organizations is great, but really kind of sitting in that space of like doing just the day by day work is still really important. It doesn't have to be viral. It doesn't have to be exactly like how someone else is doing it.
There's two parts to that. You said something at the beginning that is a little off topic, but I think is important to talk about, with having a voice. So establishing your voice really early on can be really, really helpful. And again, that's where our branding guidelines comes in. I think that's especially if you have more than one person doing marketing. So I didn't have one when it was just me, but when we got my development associate coworker who does our emails, we were like, we have to establish this voice because we're both writing this, but my natural way of talking is very different than hers. So that was really helpful right off the bat. And while I would say that the shelter's voice is a little bit just the natural way that I talk, it's not like when I write, I am not writing as me necessarily. I am writing as the organization. That is something that I sometimes see in, I think, smaller or like organizations where they don't have a lot of people, and you see a lot of stuff that's like I'm doing this, or you're speaking directly as yourself. And I would definitely recommend against doing that. Just because sometimes when you're writing like that, it can be a little bit easier for your personal opinions and judgments possibly to come out. So I always say it's good. I joke that it's the royal we. We want to, pretend we're the queen. We always want to speak in the royal we. Unless I am direct messaging maybe with someone, and then I'll give them my name, but it's always we. So that's a small tip. As for kind of our national animal sheltering social media world, we had talked about this a little bit in the beginning, that sometimes it reminds me like a little bit of high school in the sense of peer pressure. No one's mean, like everyone in the social media world and welfare is so nice. So it's not that. But because our sort of work lives are existing on the internet, everything we're doing is on the internet, it can be really easy to fall into the trap of, I have to make this go viral. Or if I haven't had something go viral, like, oh, I'm not doing my job right. Or, this shelter is doing this super funny thing, I need to do that. It's really easy to fall into that trap. Like, I've done it myself. Like, I think one that gets brought up to me all the time is the few times where shelters or rescues have written about dogs that they've had that are kind of little like demons from hell.
And the sassy
way.
bio, if you will.
Yes, and the really sassy bio. And like every time I see that, we're like, we should write one of those for our dogs. And what I usually tell them is, I'm not good at writing like that. I will just flat out say, like, I am not very good at that kind of writing. Like, I'm not that funny. Like, unfortunately, I'm just not that funny. And so I'll say, like, if there's a volunteer that wants to try writing it or another staff member, great. But like, just because they did it and it worked for them doesn't mean that it will work for us because of that. But also secondarily, because the more you try to force something and the more you try to like make something work for you, the less likely it is to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do our best, and obviously our job as social media people is to know what's going on in the world and to be able to write about these things. But it's also like, you know what? If you don't know the newest trending meme on Twitter, don't worry about it. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
If you do, great. If you don't, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think what you want people to get out of that, and what I also want people to get out of that, is like a little bit of self-forgiveness. And like, you don't have to be everything to everyone, it's really about the longevity of being like, we want you to stay in this work for a really long time. And it's already difficult, like working with animals is wonderful and also difficult. And so we want people to feel like you're doing a good job, and you don't need to be someone else to be doing a good job.
And that it can be really easy to get wrapped up because we're always on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, whatever. It's so easy to see what another organization might be doing. And sometimes you're going to feel inspired by it, right? Which is great. If you're feeling inspired by it, like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Maybe we can do our own version, or maybe it gave me another idea. That is fantastic. But if you're logging in and you're feeling like, oh, they're so much better at this than I am, or oh, how do all their videos get that many views? Like, oh, I just don't feel good about myself. Don't. Doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help you, right? Doesn't help the animals. And yeah, I just think we have to remember not to compare ourselves to each other too much in a negative way, as opposed to using each other as inspiration for things and making something your own, or not doing it at all. Like, like you're not doing it in any way, shape, or form because it just doesn't work for you. That's another big part of it.
Yes. Yeah. There's absolute wisdom in that, in the not doing sometimes.
Yes. And so it's easy because it gets overwhelming, like, I was going to say sometimes
tons of content out there, so
there's so much content. And I know this isn't quite the question, but I thought it might be good, to hear a personal experience of like feeling overwhelmed is, I love my job and generally people tell me I do a pretty good job, but very recently we've had a kind of like little group of animals that when they came in, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get these animals adopted? We currently have this guy who got adopted, diabetic. We have another diabetic cat in the back who's older in the back. He's just not available yet. So 2 diabetic cats. We also have a cat with asthma that she needs a very expensive inhaler to not have asthma attacks. And then, and then we've got several long-term dogs that have reactivity or things that in our area make them a little bit harder to adopt out. And I mean, the other week I was just like, this is too much. I don't know how I'm going to do any of this. I had a little breakdown, you guys. I mean, it wasn't a breakdown. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just was like totally overwhelmed. And I just had to kind of step back and remind myself, like, you're not doing this alone. Like, I think that's another thing that happens a lot too with shelter marketing, especially when it comes to adoptable animals, is feeling like the sole responsibility of finding a home for this dog is on you, right? And it's not, but sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes, especially when they've been there a long time and people are like, what can we do to get this dog adopted? I don't know.
Right.
I don't have an answer for anyone. I just want people to know that that's totally normal. And like, everyone's been through that, and just remind yourself that like, this is a team effort. And what worked for me was I just legitimately went to our director of operations and I was like, I'm totally feeling overwhelmed. I need help coming up with some ideas for these animals. And it worked. We actually got one dog, a couple dogs into foster so we could learn more about them. I think sometimes just being that honest and saying like, we got to come up with a plan, and kind of, it pushes everyone into action a little bit. And it makes you realize like, it's not just you, like everyone kind of is sometimes feeling overwhelmed.
It's such a good reminder that marketing doesn't exist in a silo. Like marketing and operations work hand in hand. And so you have to have those conversations sometimes. I think it's also a good opportunity to, like, if you're inspired by what another shelter is doing and you're having one of those moments, like, message them and see if you can talk to the person that's doing their marketing. Because I have never encountered someone in this work in 12
that doesn't want to talk about it.
That would say like, no, I'm not going to talk to you about this. Like everyone understands that moment that you're having. And I think it's the real value of this community of folks who are doing a very unique job, but are very willing to share about it,
Yeah, there's not a lot of Googling that you can do with what we do. It's sort of like you have a few resources, and outside of that, like, there's no one out there really gets it. And I think that's a really important thing. And I hope anyone that's watching this knows they can always, email me or message us on any of our social platforms, and it will be me that you're talking to. But sometimes bouncing ideas off of a completely outside perspective is really helpful as well, because it's one thing for me to bounce an idea off someone that works here, but they're still in it, so sometimes it's, hey, like I have this crazy idea, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. Like, let's brainstorm. You can go a lot of places with that. So I definitely recommend that as well. We're all friends here.
That's such good advice, because I think we are really, really close to our work. And I think that sometimes creates just a little bit of like a gully between what our understanding of a situation is and what maybe someone outside of this world that we're in, what their understanding would be. That's such great advice.
And you'll probably find, like, most people that are watching, I'm gonna guess, find that they sort of feel a little bit of like a jack of all trades at their facility, because we kind of have to know like everything, at least a little bit. And I think sometimes that's where the feeling of like, I'm solely responsible for this comes in. So we do weekly check-ins with our adoptions team, or I do weekly check-ins with our adoptions team, just to sort of say like, hey, I posted about so-and-so on this day. Did anyone come in? Like we communicate about it. But it's also a time that weekly I remind them that if I do great marketing, which I'm like, hopefully I'm doing, but if I'm doing great marketing and I'm getting people into the building, that has to continue through the whole process, right? So it can't just stop at their profile on the internet. Like it has to continue and be kind of a cohesive thing. So we talk a lot about the in-person marketing and customer service side of things as well. So it all works together.
Oh, that's so important. That could be a whole other conversation.
Another topic. Yeah.
I have one last question for you, because we talked a lot about kind of the digital marketing side of things. And you and I were talking earlier about some signs that you had made, and I wanted to make sure that we talked about those, because I think, speaking of that more in-person experience, I just wanted to give you that opportunity to talk about those really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we just said that, there's people generally, a lot of times their first interaction is going to be our website or maybe Pet Finder or something like that, and then they're going to physically move into our space, and it's how do we continue that experience in the space. So our signage, and I can try to take some pictures if it would be helpful, but we try to keep our signage very simple. They have their kennel card, which just has their photo, their basic info, and their bio, their dating profile that's on, same thing that's online. And some of them may have extra signage in very specific circumstances. So we have these little templated signs that I made for certain medical conditions. We don't do these for behavioral. A couple of dogs, like there's one sign I made for dogs that is for dogs that are like really reactive in their kennel, but are super nice. And it says like, I might bark at you. Like, it's not personal. Like, and again, making it very friendly and open. But these are typically for our medical animals, and it's double-sided. So it just super basically says, I'm diabetic. Flip this over for more information. And then the bottom, it says, please don't give me treats or extra food. So these are doing double duty. They're information for the public, but they're also information for the volunteers. So that they're aware of animals that may have medical or dietary needs. And then on the back, I worked with our vet team, this is probably backwards, but I worked with our vet team to write up a very simple and really friendly explanation of 4 different conditions. So diabetes, FELV, FIV, and hyperthyroidism are the ones that we get the most commonly. And so like what I can read this to you is it says, diabetes is a condition where blood sugar, glucose, cannot be effectively regulated within the body. I take insulin every day, so I do make it personal, like they're talking to you. I take insulin every day to help manage my condition and eat a special diet as well. You might be apprehensive about giving a cat a shot twice a day, but I promise it's way easier than it looks. You can ask an AWLA staff member for more information on my treatment. So funny thing is, as I'm reading this, I'm like thinking of potential improvements that I can make to it. I haven't, this one's a little bit old and I'm like, I could say that a little bit better. But these have been really helpful. Like I said, for volunteers, like if someone asks, well, what does it entail? They have a little bit of information to be able to give the public. And it does give the public a little bit of heads up on certain things that they're gonna know one way or the other, right? So we've taken, so whereas online, there's nothing, none of this goes on their profile. Then this is kind of the next step, is a little bit more information when they are physically here and can ask someone a question. That's the big difference. Because when they're online, they can't ask any of us a question. And then it gives them the opportunity to go and ask and learn more. We have not seen like an issue with this putting people off. And I think that's just because we really, really focus in on the language that's on there and making it very easy to understand and taking some of the fear out, hopefully a little bit. So, you know, like our FELV one talks about like, I'm gonna live, it says, I mean, I'm gonna live a perfectly happy, if slightly shorter life, you know, so just making it as open as we can. And this is a changing thing, you know, if this needs to be updated, as I think it does, as I'm reading it to you, we're gonna update it, we're gonna change it. So we do use these, and they've been really helpful, and like they just live next to their kennel card.
I love that.
But that's it. That's the only, like, we don't have a lot of extra signage because we just want people to kind of focus on the animal.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the ability to take some of our field is full of a lot of jargon, but especially like medical jargon, I think really can be so intimidating. And so being able to take those kinds of terms, it made me think of even mange is always like my go-to example. Like we all understand what that is. And you know, like someone says Demodex and you're like, okay, got it. Like I know what that means. But a community member would have no context for that possibly. So being able to also just like take all of the fear out of the condition, I think is so important.
That is a part of my job, which sometimes I know the staff get a little annoyed with me, but like part of my job is to be like, you know what? I know that we know what this word means and you think it's a very basic word, but there are people that may not know what this means. Even if it's just like a super like common word, even outside of animal welfare, it's being aware of other languages and that kind of thing. So like a big part of like, so step 3, when they get to asking us about what's in there, you know, tell me more about the diabetes, tell me more about their behavior issue, is we talk a lot about essentially translating what our veterinarian or our behavior team have written, because they're writing it in industry language, right? And I'm like, you cannot just read that verbatim to a member of the public. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? So we talk a lot about how to translate some of those things into layman's terms. And our veterinarian does typically write a medical like kind of review about if they have, you know, diabetes or whatever. And then she will write a layman's terms kind of explanation of it for us to read out to the adopter when they're here. So that's a really important thing. So it's kind of like the 3 different steps of getting this information. You know, it's a little bit of a train journey through.
Yeah. And again, it's just all of it works together. Nothing exists in a vacuum. So that's so valuable. Oh, well, I've taken up enough of your time, and I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. And I think that you have some great tips for just kind of revisiting how to make this foundational and important part.
I hope it helps someone. And like I said, if anyone has questions or ever wants to chat, as you can tell, we love to chat.
Yes.
Oh, I could be here for hours doing this. Like I'm more than happy to like talk. I don't have all the answers, but sometimes just talking it through with someone, we're all kind of swimming with a little life vest and doing our best to get along, and don't ever let someone make you think that they're not doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We're all doing it.
Oh, I love that. Wise words. Thanks.
I always have to remember them myself too.
Exactly. We all need them tattooed on our foreheads.
Right. No, thank you so much for having me, Caleb.
Thank you.